Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We have quite a stack of documents on the desk today, and I'll be honest, it makes for some pretty heavy reading.
It's not exactly light beach reading, is it?
No, not at all. We're looking at the new Security Report 2026 that just came out of Munich. We've got transcripts from, world leaders that sound, well, frankly, alarming.
Yeah.
And we're cross-referencing all of it with Ray Dalio's work, specifically principles for dealing with the changing world order. And the overall feeling is, it feels like the ground is shifting under our feet.
It's a heavy stack, you're right, but it's probably the most necessary reading anyone could do right now.
You think so?
Absolutely. I mean, if you've been scrolling through the news or even just looking at your portfolio and feeling like the rules of the game have just fundamentally changed,
Right.
You're not imagining it. You're not. The signal-to-noise ratio in geopolitics is usually pretty low.
Yeah.
Lots of noise.
All noise, usually.
But this week, after this conference, it feels like it's all signal.
That's exactly the feeling, isn't it? The rules have changed. And that is literally the headline coming out of the Munich Security Conference this February.
It is.
We're not talking about some minor diplomatic spat or little trade disagreement here. We have the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, going on record explicitly and saying the world order as it has stood for decades no longer exists.
It's a eulogy.
A eulogy.
Yeah, that's what that quote is. He's not warning us about some future threat. He's not saying we have to be careful or else. He's stating, as a fact, that the old structure is dead. It's gone.
But he wasn't alone?
He was not singing a solo. You had French President Emmanuel Macron right there with him, basically telling Europe to prepare for war.
Saying the American security umbrella isn't what it used to be?
It's not a given anymore. And then you had Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, calling this a new geopolitics era. I mean, get this. When the U.S., France, and Germany are all telling you the same thing,
you have to listen.
You have to listen. The consensus is overwhelming.
And the title of the conference report itself was Under Destruction. That is not exactly subtle.
Subtlety is clearly not the goal this year.
Right.
Under destruction. It implies the house is actively being torn down around us. It's not under renovation. It's not in need of repair.
No.
It is being destroyed.
But here's the challenge I really want us to tackle today.
Yeah.
It is. It's really easy to look at Munich, to look at the headlines from Ukraine or Taiwan or the Middle East and just see chaos. Just random, scary, unpredictable chaos. But the reason we brought in Ray Dalio's work, specifically his chapter on what he calls the big cycle, is because he makes a powerful argument that this isn't random at all.
Right. Not even a little bit.
In fact, if you actually look at the data, at the historical patterns, we're right on schedule.
And that's why Dalio is so valuable here. He looks at history less like a storyteller and more like a mechanic.
A mechanic, I like that.
Yeah, he's looking for the gears, the levers. He's not interested in the ideology or the morality of it, not really. He just wants to know the mechanics of cause and effect, what causes what.
Okay.
And his whole argument is that what feels like chaos to us, living through it, is actually just the clock ticking over from one phase of the cycle to the next.
He calls it stage 6, which I have to say sounds a bit like a terminal diagnosis.
It's not a great stage to be in, no. It's the most volatile part of what he calls the big cycle of external order and disorder.
Okay, so let's break that down. The big cycle.
To understand stage 6, you first have to get that history for him moves in a loop. It's not a straight line of progress.
It repeats.
It repeats. You have a period of peace and prosperity, which is great. But that prosperity leads to big wealth gaps. It leads to debt, which then leads to internal conflict, populism, polarization, fighting within countries, and eventually that spills over into external conflict, wars, which act as a kind of violent reset for the whole system. A new winner emerges, sets new rules, and a new period of peace begins.
And we've lived through the peace and prosperity part.
We did. The post-World War II, post-Cold War era, that was the good part. Now we're in the disorder.
Okay, so before we get into the really scary details of stage 6, we have to define the playing field. Because Dalio makes this distinction that I think is just crucial for understanding why 2026 feels so lawless.
Right.
He separates internal order from external order.
This is the law of the jungle concept, and it is absolutely vital to grasp this. It's maybe the most important thing.
Why is it so important?
Because most of us, especially if you live in a developed nation, we're conditioned to what he calls internal order.
Okay.
Think about it. If you and I have a contract dispute, or if you steal my car, or if I punch you, There's a process.
Right. There are laws, police, judges.
Exactly. There's a constitution. The government has what they call a monopoly on force, so we don't have to fight each other in the street.
Yeah.
We outsource the violence to the state.
The rules are enforced by a higher power. If I break the law, I go to jail. Simple.
Correct. But external order, that's the space between nations. That is the Wild West. It always has been.
There's no word police.
There is no global sheriff who can arrest a nation.
Now, people will immediately point to the United Nations or the International Court of Justice, and they'll say, hey, wait a minute, we have rules, we have international law.
And those are institutions, sure, but let's be honest with ourselves. They lack teeth. They have no real enforcement power.
So what's the point?
Dalio points out a really hard truth here. He says international law only exists as long as the most powerful nations agree to pretend it exists.
Ouch.
The moment a superpower, let's say the US or China or Russia, decides a UN ruling is against their national interest, what do?
They ignore it.
They just ignore it.
Yeah.
And who is going to stop them? Who is going to arrest a country with thousands of nuclear weapons? Who's going to force them to comply?
No one.
No one.
So ultimately, the international system is governed by just raw power.
Might is right. That is the baseline of history. If you have more power than the collective, you get to make the rules. When powerful countries disagree, and they can't solve it with words, they don't go to a judge.
They threaten.
They threaten. And if the threat doesn't work, they fight. That is the default state of history. We've just been lucky enough to live through a very long, very unusual pause in that dynamic since 1945.
And stage 6 is the end of the pause.
It's the end of the truce, exactly. Stage 6 is when the dominant power, the one that usually enforces the rules like the U.S. has done for 80 years, gets challenged.
Okay.
The teacher starts to lose control of the classroom, and once the other kids in the class realize the teacher can't actually stop them from doing what they want.
The rules just evaporate.
They evaporate. And that is what Chancellor Merz meant when he said the old order is dead, the enforcement mechanism is broken.
That then leads us to what I think is the most chilling part of the whole Dalio framework.
Mm-hmm.
If the rules are gone, the only mechanism left for resolving these big disputes becomes war.
It's the final arbiter.
Right. But, and this is honestly the biggest aha moment for me in all this reading, we have a very Hollywood definition of what war is.
Oh, absolutely. Tanks rolling across a border, explosions.
Exactly. We think of tanks and soldiers. But Dalio says if you're waiting for the tanks to show up, you've already missed the first 4 stages of the war.
You're late to the party. The party's been going on for years.
Which is such a dangerous misconception.
It's the danger of the modern headlines. People think, well, nobody's shooting yet, so we're at peace.
Yeah.
That is a deadly complacency. Dalio identifies 5 types of wars. The shooting war, the military war, that's number 5. It's the last one.
And the other 4.
The other 4 usually rage for about 10 years on average before the first shot is even fired.
10 years. So we are likely right now in that 10-year run-up.
I would say we're well into it.
Okay, let's walk through these because I want to map them to what we're actually seeing in 2026. The first one he lists is trade and economic war.
This is usually the first tremor you feel.
How does it start?
You see tariffs, import restrictions, countries start saying, I am going to use my market access as a weapon against you.
We've been seeing this for years, the U.S.-China trade war.
Exactly. But it escalates. It stops being about just protecting a local industry, let's save our steel workers. It becomes about actively inflicting pain on the rival.
So it's offensive, not defense.
It becomes purely offensive. It's saying, I'm willing to hurt my own consumers. I'll make them pay more for stuff just to make sure your economy suffers more.
Which bleeds right into the second type he talks about, technology war. This feels like the defining conflict of our decade.
It absolutely is. It's the new high ground. It's the fight for the commanding heights of the future.
What does that mean, commanding heights?
It's the realization that technology isn't just a consumer good, like a toaster or a car. It's national security. It's power. Who has the best artificial intelligence? Who has the quantum computers? Who has the fastest semiconductor chips? Who has the hypersonic guidance systems? Those are the questions that determine who's in charge for the next 50 years.
And it's not just about having them yourself.
No, that's the crucial part. It's become more about, how do I stop you from getting them?
We see this with the export controls constantly. You can't sell this chip to that country. You can't use our software.
It's treating a microprocessor like it's weapons-grade uranium.
Because In a way, it is.
In the 21st century, it is. If you control the key technologies, you control future productivity, and you control future military capability. Losing the tech war means you lose the future. Period.
So nations are getting incredibly aggressive.
Incredibly. Stealing tech, blocking tech, sabotaging each other's research and development. It's a full-blown, undeclared war happening right now.
Then we have number 3, geopolitical war. This feels more like a classic Risk board game.
It is. It's moving pieces on the map. It's all about territory and alliances.
Give me an example.
I'm putting a new naval base on this strategic island. Oh yeah, well, I'm signing a new defense treaty with your neighbor.
It's all posturing.
It's posturing, but it's very serious posturing. It's trying to checkmate your opponent on the map without actually attacking their pieces yet. You're trying to close off their shipping lanes or surround them with your friends so they feel boxed in.
We see this in the South China Sea, in the Arctic.
All over the world, it's a global chess match for influence.
And that brings us to the 4th one. This one, I think, is the most abstract for people, but maybe the most devastating. Capital war.
The weaponization of money.
What does it actually look like?
It looks like sanctions. Freezing a country's assets held in your banks. Cutting a country off from the global financial system, like the SWIFT network, so they can't send or receive money internationally.
So they can't trade.
They can't trade, they can't borrow money on the capital markets. You are essentially trying to induce a financial heart attack in your opponent's economy.
This is what the West did to Russia after the Ukraine invasion.
It's the textbook example, and it's incredibly powerful. You're telling them, your money is no good here, your savings are worthless. It's an economic siege.
But Dalio warns that this is a double-edged sword.
Right, a very dangerous one. Because if you weaponize your own currency too much, what happens?
People stop wanting to use it.
People stop trusting it. If I'm another country and I see you freezing Russia's assets, I'm thinking, what if you get mad at me next?
Maybe I shouldn't keep all my money in your banks, in your currency.
Exactly. Maybe I should buy some gold instead. So in the short term, it's a stranglehold, but long term, it can erode the very foundation of your own power, which is the world's trust in your money.
So we have these 4 soft wars, as he calls them: trade, tech, geopolitics, and capital. They are all exertions of force trying to make the other side submit without firing a shot.
And they are the precursors. They are the warning signs. Dalio's massive analysis of history going back 500 years shows that these 4 types of conflict intensify and intensify and intensify until they reach a breaking point.
And what happens at the breaking point?
When the soft wars fail to resolve the conflict, or, and this is key, when they back an opponent into a corner they feel they can't escape from.
That's when you get type 5.
That's when you get military war, the shooting war.
And I assume when the shooting starts, the other 4 just go into overdrive.
They go nuclear, metaphorically speaking. Total trade blockades, total seizure of all assets, the gloves come off completely. It's total war.
The question that just nags at me through all of this is, why? Why do we do this? We have a globalized economy. We have or had peace. We had prosperity. Why do nations willfully, consciously walk down this staircase toward destruction? Is it just inevitable? Are we just programmed to destroy everything we build?
It's not that it's inevitable in some, mystical sense. It's inevitable in a human sense.
What's the difference?
The difference is that it's driven by predictable human behaviors and economic realities. It all comes down to a concept you probably learned in high school economics.
Which one?
Guns versus butter.
Ah, yes, guns versus butter.
It really holds up. Guns, as you know, is military spending. Security, defense, projecting power. Butter is social spending. Healthcare, infrastructure, pensions, education. All the things that make life good for the people at home.
Okay.
Now, when a country is on the rise, think America in the 1950s or even the 90s or Britain in the 1800s, it's rich. It produces more than it consumes. It has a surplus.
It's profitable.
It's a profitable enterprise, exactly. So it can afford the best military in the world and the best lifestyle for its citizens. It can have lots of guns and lots of butter.
The golden age. Everyone is happy.
Everyone is happy. But over time, things change. That dominant country gets expensive. Its workers demand higher wages. Maybe they get a little less productive because they're comfortable.
And other countries start catching up.
Right. They copy your technology. They have cheaper labor. They're hungrier. And at the same time, internally, the wealth gap in the rich country widens. And the social promises made during the good times, pensions, healthcare, they come due. And they are massive.
So suddenly, the government doesn't have enough money to pay for the giant military and the giant social safety net.
The math stops working. They have to choose. More guns or more butter.
And that's the trap.
That is the ultimate trap, because if you cut the butter, if you tell people their pensions are cut or their health care is gone, what happens?
You get revolution at home. Populism, anger. People are in the streets.
Right, but if you cut the guns, if you shrink your military...
You get challenged abroad. Your enemies see you as weak and they pounce.
So what do politicians who want to get reelected always do? They don't choose.
They try to have both.
They try to fake it, they borrow money, and when they can't borrow anymore, they just print it.
Which creates inflation and massive debt bubbles.
Exactly. And this whole period of internal decay, the debt, the inflation, the political division, this is usually the precise moment that our rising power,
like China today,
or historically, Germany in the early 1900s, or Japan in the 30s. This is when they look at the old power, the incumbent, and they see weakness. They see a country that's overextended, divided, and going broke.
And then we enter what you call the prisoner's dilemma. I really want to dig into this because it explains so much about why we can't just, all get along.
It's the game theory component, and it's tragic, really.
Explain it.
Okay, you have two powers, an established one and a rising one. Logic says they should cooperate. A war is terrible for business. It destroys everyone's wealth. A win-win peace is the most rational outcome. If the U.S. and China cooperate, the whole world gets richer.
But they don't do it.
They can't. And the reason they can't is trust, or a lack of it. They can't trust the other guy not to screw them over.
So how does each side see it?
The rising power thinks if I don't challenge them now while I'm strong and they're weak, they will surely use their remaining power to contain and crush me later.
I have to act now or lose my chance forever.
Right. And the existing power thinks, if I let them keep rising, if I accommodate them, they will eventually become stronger than me and they will destroy me and my way of life.
I have to stop them now while I'm still on top.
So it's pure fear. Fear of annihilation. That fear makes them arm themselves. It makes them push and test each other. And eventually they push each other into a lose-lose war that neither of them really wanted.
Because the alternative seemed worse.
Because the perceived cost of backing down feels higher than the cost of fighting.
Wow. That one calculation, the cost of backing down is higher than the cost of fighting. That is terrifying.
It's the tipping point.
It explains so much of history. It's not that leaders are evil and want war. It's that they feel trapped, and peace feels too expensive. It means accepting national decline.
It means accepting your own irrelevance or your own destruction. And when a nation feels that keeping the peace means losing its sovereignty, its prosperity, or its future, it will almost always choose war.
Let's make this concrete. Dalio doesn't just theorize. He points again and again to the 1930s as the ultimate mirror for what's happening today.
The clearest parallel we have.
We all know how the 30s ended, but it's the path to the war that we really need to study, the mechanics of it.
Yes. The parallels are incredibly uncomfortably specific. The catalyst, the big one, was the global depression of 1929. The world economy collapsed.
And what happens when the economy collapses?
People get scared. They get desperate. And when people are scared and desperate, they don't want debate and democracy. They want a strong leader who promises to fix everything.
They turn to populism, to autocracy.
They don't care about democratic norms. They care about feeding their families.
We saw this with Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, the Japanese militarists. Even someone like FDR in the U.S. consolidated a huge amount of power.
Right. But let's look very closely at Germany because it's the most extreme example. In the early 30s, Germany was completely crushed. Crushed by war reparations, debt from World War I, crushed by the Depression. Unemployment was at 25%.
1 in 4 men out of work.
Yeah.
That's a broken society.
It's a failed state waiting to happen. So Hitler comes in. And what does he do? First, he defaults. He stops paying the foreign debts. He tells the world to get lost. Then he starts printing money like there's no tomorrow.
And he pours that money into what?
Into guns and butter. He builds the Autobahn, he builds tanks, planes, ships. He rearms the country in defiance of all the treaties.
And the crazy thing is, from an economic perspective, it worked for a while.
It skyrocketed. This is the part people conveniently forget when they look back. Unemployment went from 25% to basically 0 in 5 years. The German stock market, get this, rose nearly 70% between 1933 and 1938.
So if you were a German citizen or an investor there, it looked like an economic miracle.
It looked like roaring success. You would have looked at your portfolio, at the new highways, at everyone having a job, and you would have thought, this new order is working, this guy knows what he's doing.
But it was all a mirage.
It was a war economy, masquerading as a recovery. It was all funded by impossible levels of debt and money printing, and it required constant expansion conquest to keep feeding the machine.
It was a Ponzi scheme.
It was a national Ponzi scheme that required stealing resources from its neighbors just to keep going.
Okay, so then let's look at Japan, the other side of the world, the Pacific side of the coming war.
A very similar story, but driven by a different need. Japan is an island. They have no oil, no iron ore, no rubber, almost no natural resources.
So they live or die by trade.
They live or die by trade. And when the Depression hit, global trade collapsed. Japanese exports fell by 50%.
50%.
They were economically suffocating. And their leadership, which was increasingly dominated by the military, made a cold calculation.
Which was?
That the only way for Japan to survive and be a great power was to take the resources it needed by force to build an empire.
So they invaded Manchuria in China.
They went into Manchuria for coal and iron. They pushed further into China. They looked south towards the Dutch East Indies for oil.
And this is where the economic war that we talked about before really enters the chat. The U.S. didn't just sit back and let that happen.
No. This is a crucial point. The U.S. engaged in severe capital and trade warfare for years before Pearl Harbor.
Most people think the conflict started on December 7th, 1941.
The shooting war started then. The economic war had been raging. The U.S. froze all Japanese assets in American banks. We cut them off from the global financial system. And then came the final blow.
The oil embargo.
We cut off their fuel.
And how much of their oil came from the U.S.?
About 80%.
Wow. So we cut off 80% of their energy supply.
Overnight.
Overnight. The Japanese leadership did the math. They looked at their reserves. They had about 2 years of oil left. Maybe less if they were fighting a major war.
So they had a ticking clock.
They had a ticking clock. If they did nothing, their economy would grind to a halt and their military would be useless. They would cease to be a great power. They would be completely at the mercy of the United States.
They were cornered. That is the break point Dalio talks about. They faced a choice. Option A, back down, give up China, accept national humiliation and the collapse of their imperial dream. Or option B, gamble everything on one, desperate knockout blow against the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, hoping to cripple America long enough for them to secure the resources of Southeast Asia.
They chose the gamble.
They chose the gamble. The economic war forced the military war. It left them with no other option they could accept.
That narrative, it completely changes how you look at headlines today.
It should.
When you read about a ban on semiconductor exports or sanctions on a country's energy sector, you realize you're not just looking at trade policy.
You're looking at the fuse. You're watching the pressure gauge on the boiler rise. Every sanction, every ban is pushing an opponent closer to that corner where they have to choose between submission or fighting.
I want to touch on what happened to the markets during that time. You mentioned the German market rallied like crazy before the war. What happens when the shooting actually starts?
Wealth destruction. Absolute catastrophic wealth destruction for the losers.
So if you held German stocks or Japanese stocks,
you were wiped out completely. The markets were eventually closed. The currency became worthless because the governments essentially printed it into oblivion to fund the war effort. Your life savings gone.
And in the U.S., in Britain, the winners.
Even for the winners, it was rocky. The U.S. market took a huge hit after Pearl Harbor. It only really began to recover and then rally after the tide of the war clearly turned. For the U.S., that was the Battle of Midway in 1942.
So it wasn't a straight line up.
Not at all. In the chaos of the early war, when the outcome was very much in doubt, cash was trash because of inflation. And government debt was incredibly dangerous. Who wants to lend money to a government that might not exist in 2 years?
So if cash is trash and bonds are dangerous, what was the safe haven? What held its value?
Gold.
Gold.
It was the coin of the realm. When nations are at war, they don't trust each other's paper promises. You think the British are going to accept German marks as payment in 1941? No. If you're a neutral country like Sweden selling iron ore to Germany, you don't want their paper money. You want to be paid in gold. It's the one asset that maintains its value when the entire political and financial structure is burning down.
Okay. That is a very sobering history lesson.
Yeah.
But this show is about actionable insights.
Right.
We aren't here to just doom scroll the past. We want to navigate the future. We call this the Wealthnetic approach.
Yeah.
We need to take this high-level, scary geopolitical theory and turn it into actual strategy for our lives, for our finances.
Exactly. Let's translate this into strategy. How to position yourself when you know you're living in stage 6.
Okay, we've boiled it down to 4 key takeaways from Dalio's principles and this history. Takeaway number 1, respect the power of soft wars.
This is a huge mental shift for most people. It means you have to stop dismissing the headlines.
What do you mean?
When you see a news story about a new tariff on solar panels, or a new ban on a piece of software, or a new sanction on a foreign bank, don't just see it as politics.
See it for what it is.
See it for what it is. A move in one of the 4 non-military wars. It is a thermometer reading for stage 6. These are not isolated spats. They are data points on a trend line, and the trend line is heading towards more conflict.
So practically, if you run a business, what does this mean?
It means you have to assume your supply chains will be weaponized. The era of pure efficiency is over.
You can't rely on just-in-time global shipping when the world is in a constant trade war.
No. Efficiency is the enemy in stage 6. Resilience is the goal. You need redundancy. You need to know exactly where your stuff comes from. If your entire business relies on one specialized chip from Taiwan or one specific raw material from Russia or China,
you have a single point of failure.
You have a single point of failure that is sitting directly in the crosshairs of global geopolitics. You have to diversify. You have to stress test your business for a world where globalization goes into reverse.
So the action is audit your exposure. Personally and professionally. Don't assume the free flow of goods, capital, and technology is guaranteed anymore.
Correct. Assume it's not.
Okay. Takeaway number 2, financial defense. And this brings up that really interesting gold versus debt dynamic we just touched on from the 1930s.
Right. This is about how you protect your savings in this environment. In a stable world, in stage 5, the peaceful part of the cycle, you want to own debt.
You want to own government bonds.
Yes. Bonds are great. They pay you interest, they're considered safe, the government promises to pay you back, and you believe them because the system is stable.
But in stage 6, that logic flips on its head.
It completely inverts. In stage 6, governments are the primary source of the instability. They are the ones fighting the wars, they are the ones printing money to pay for the guns.
Which devalues the currency.
It devalues the currency and makes their debt, their bonds, incredibly risky. They might pay you back, but they'll pay you back in money that's worth a lot less. Or, in the worst case, they lose the war and default entirely.
So the classic safe investment becomes the dangerous one. The strategy has to flip.
You have to minimize your exposure to assets that are, at their core, just a promise from a government to pay you back in a currency they control and can devalue at will.
So you move toward,
You move toward hard assets, things that have intrinsic value. Gold is the classic historical example because it is nobody's liability. It's not someone's promise, it's just an asset.
But it's not just gold.
No. It could be productive real estate, it could be commodities, it could be stakes in businesses that produce essential goods and have pricing power. It's about owning things that can't be printed.
It sounds like you're shifting your mindset from return on capital to return of capital.
That is the perfect way to put it. You're in survival mode.
Yeah.
You're not trying to get rich quick. You're trying not to get poor while the governments inflate away their massive debts.
Takeaway number 3. This one involves that guns and butter concept again. We're calling it the productivity metric.
This one applies to nations, but honestly, it applies just as well to your own household.
How so?
Dalio's core principle of national success, the absolute bedrock, is painfully simple. Earn more than you spend.
It sounds so simple, it's almost insulting to say out loud, but it's the root of all this trouble we're describing.
It is. It's everything. If a nation or a person or a company consistently funds their lifestyle entirely through debt, they are fragile, they are vulnerable, their entire existence depends on someone else being willing to lend them money.
And if the credit window closes?
They collapse. In a volatile world, you cannot afford to be fragile. You need to be robust, so you need to look at your own balance sheet. What is your debt-to-income ratio? If you lost your job tomorrow, or if the economy takes a massive hit, can you survive? Or are you leveraged to the hilt, one missed paycheck away from disaster?
Deleverage. Build a buffer. Build a surplus. Don't be the country that has to choose between eating and defending itself.
Be the one with options, because cash flow is king when credit markets freeze up. Productivity is what makes you resilient.
And finally, our 4th takeaway. Seek win-win relationships. This seems to run counter to the whole prisoner's dilemma, might is right world we've been describing.
It's the only way to escape the trap of the prisoner's dilemma.
Explain that.
At a geopolitical level, it's about not backing your rivals into a corner where they feel they have no choice but to fight. But let's bring it down to our lives. Whether you are navigating office politics, a big business deal, or even a family argument, you have to understand the other side's red lines.
The things they absolutely cannot afford to lose.
Right. They're non-negotiables. Japan's red line in 1941 was the oil. When the U.S. crossed that line, they fought. In your own life, you have to identify those red lines in others. Don't try to win 100% of the pie if it means the other person loses their dignity, their job, or their livelihood.
Because that's how you make a permanent enemy.
That's how you create a stupid war. Dalio's term for a conflict that ends up costing you far more than you ever could have gained, even if you win.
So wisdom is knowing when to stop pushing.
It's what I'd call strategic empathy. It's not about being nice for the sake of being nice. It's about being smart. It's about survival. If you can understand what the other side truly needs to survive, and you can leave them a graceful exit, you can often avoid the fight altogether.
So to try and pull this all together, we are looking at the world in February 2026.
Yeah.
The Munich report says the old order is under destruction. Dalio's cycle says we are deep in stage 6. It's messy, it's dangerous. But it is also a cycle.
It has happened before, and before that, and before that. The 1930s happened. The Dutch Empire collapsed. The Spanish Empire collapsed. The Roman Empire collapsed. The cycle turns. Peace leads to prosperity. Prosperity leads to debt and inequality. Debt and inequality lead to conflict. We are in the conflict phase.
But knowing the map, knowing the stages of the cycle, means we don't have to be blind.
Exactly.
We know that war happens when the cost of peace becomes too high for one side. We know that markets eventually react to the reality of power and productivity, not just to optimism and hope.
Knowledge is the ultimate hedge. It really is. When you understand the mechanics of the machine, the daily news stops being a source of pure panic and starts being a data stream.
You can see where things are heading.
You can see the patterns, you can position yourself, you stop being just a victim of the cycle and you start being a navigator of it.
A final thought to leave our listener with, something to chew on.
We talked a lot today about the breakdown of external order, the order between nations.
Right.
But I'd ask you to remember this. External chaos almost always triggers internal chaos. When the world breaks, societies at home fracture.
Civil unrest, polarization, the fighting turns inward.
It does. So maybe the best investment you can make right now isn't just gold or stocks or bonds. Maybe it's an investment in your internal order.
What do you mean by that?
Your community, your family, your local relationships, your own skills. When the big global systems start to shake, the small local systems are what hold you up. Who is your neighbor? Do you know them? Do you trust them? That might end up mattering a lot more than your portfolio in the middle of stage 6.
That's a powerful place to land. Building resilience starts at the dinner table, not just in the stock market. Thank you for walking us through the mechanics of this giant, scary machine today.
It's always better to see it coming.
Absolutely. And to you, our listener. The world is changing, but the patterns of history remain. Don't just watch the news. Look for the cycle underneath. Subscribe to the Wealthnetic channel if you want to keep getting these kinds of deep dives. We'll be back with another one soon and share this with someone who you think needs to understand what's really happening out there. Stay curious and stay prepared.
Take care.
See you.